We've been talking about the four vows, which we've been reciting as we did tonight just before we chanted the Heart Sutra. The four vows are beings are without number, I vow to liberate them all. Afflictions are endless, I vow to dissolve them all. Dharma gates are beyond measure, I vow to enter them all. And the one we're going to talk about tonight is the way of the Buddha is unsurpassable, I vow to become it. Lots of ways of translating all of those. We were just talking earlier about sometimes it says beings are without number, I vow to liberate them all the way we do it in our road chant, which is in Japanese and English is I vow to be with all things. So it's like the idea of just not going to war with anything. Things are coming this way, moving that way. So starting with your thought patterns right on the cushion, you can begin to liberate all beings. Start with your own thought patterns. Stop killing your thought patterns. It's a very good practice to stop going to war with whatever arises, because very similar, just the way a thought pattern arises about something and you don't want it, it's in the same way life is arising in ways that you like and are indifferent to and also are not in agreement with. So Butsudo Mujo Se Ganjo is the way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. So the way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. So the way of Buddha is the enlightened one, the awakened one. The word Buddha comes from the root Sanskrit, I think, or Pali word, Buddha, the awakened one. So what did he awaken to? He awoke to seeing. He woke up and saw that he was not separate. Nothing was separate from anything else, anywhere. That was his realization. That, and just a simple statement is awakening. No separation. Everything is dependently arisen. Every single thing, every thought you have, every idea you have, every happiness you have, every suffering you have is dependently arisen. Anything that arises, happiness is dependent on something else. Pardon me. Any difficulty you have is dependent on causes and conditions that arise all the time. Not just a simple cause and effect. Something moves, there's a sound. Cause and effect. But all of the things that are incredibly difficult to see, we quite often limit ourselves to just a simple little praise and blame. Well, they did this, so they're at fault. But they didn't do that in time, so it's their problem, it's their fault. Or I didn't do it. So chatter. The Buddha, when we say the way of the Buddha is unsurpassable, we're saying, why is the way of the Buddha unsurpassable? The Buddha, the awakened one, is unsurpassable? Are you sure? I mean, isn't there something that surpassed it somewhere? Some other guy somewhere else, Jim's way or Melvin's way was actually the real unsurpassable. The Buddha kind of came in at a close second. And of course, I'm being silly here, but I'm saying that that's a big statement. The Buddha's way is unsurpassable. Why is it unsurpassable? It is unsurpassable because it can't be surpassed. You can't go beyond what the Buddha said. The Buddha said, everything is dependently arisen. There isn't any more profound and simple statement than that. You might say, or you might listen to that and say, well, yeah, it's obvious this causes that, or everything is dependent on other things. But it's not just a few little things that we as a separate person can sit back and hide out from that dependent origination. The hiding out from dependent origination is ego, self-centeredness. If you've suffered at all in the last 3 or 4 days, if you've suffered at all, it is dependently arisen. It's not due to some problem you did, or something you did wrong, or some evil thing you committed. Dependently risen, yes.
What is the difference between an intellectual or conceptual understanding of dependently arisen and an awareness of?
The awareness that everything is dependently arisen is, if it's thorough, if it's complete, and if you've seen it, then that is, you have done as it says, I vow to become it. You have become, or you have realized that you are the way of the Buddha. You're not separate from what the Buddha saw. What he saw, you actually are that. You're not separate from the Buddha. You're not separate from anyone, anywhere. So it's not something to believe. Buddhists don't believe in things, a little bit, but it's not a belief system in the sense that quite often religious situations are about, I'm over here and I believe in, these are my beliefs, these are our beliefs. And it's very common for people all over the place, even Buddhists, to say, well, I believe this, I believe that. But belief is something you feel, think, understand to be true without having any proof. So you might be better off not to buy into anything, but wait and see. Even in this situation, we're not saying the way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. No one, if someone asks you to believe that, then that's not Buddhism. Well, we need to do something, so we're going to receive these vows. We're going to observe these vows. Beings are without number. I vow to liberate them all. Well, okay. Got to start somewhere. We'll start with that. Impossible to do. I'm going to do that. Impossible. Afflictions are endless. Passion, aggression, ignorance, jealousy, avarice, all kinds of crazy thoughts we've had in our minds in the last 12 hours, 3 hours, 8 hours. Without number. How do you really work with negative emotions that keep telling you you're wrong, you're in trouble, you're to blame, you need to straighten up, and so on and so forth? How do we really deal with that? Well, what is being taught here in this room, in this Zendo, in this meditation hall, is awareness. Be aware of the way in which you cling to some things, reject other things. Clinging, rejecting, passion, aggression. And the third one, the most difficult of the three poisons to see, is what? Ignorance. It's really hard to see the way you ignore. Really hard to see the way you distract yourself from whatever you need to be looking at. And what do you need to be looking at? Whatever is right in front of you. Whatever is right in front of you, that's what you need to look at. You might say, well, there's not much going on there. Well, look at it anyway. If it's a wall, look at it. The amazing thing about being a human being, being a living being, is you can walk out of this room and do anything you want to. Well, as long as the NSA lets you, as long as the government lets you. Our government is getting pretty difficult. So we're kind of free. We're more free than other places. So you can do whatever you want. There's a vow called in Buddhism called the reminder, called the four reminders. The first one is first contemplate the preciousness of being free and well favored, difficult to gain, easy to lose. Now I must do something meaningful. First contemplate the preciousness, incredible value of just being alive. I doubt there's a person in here who chose to be alive, who at one time was not here. 3 years before your birth, did you think, I'd kind of like to be a human being? I know it's difficult, it's challenging. I'm running a big risk here of being, what am I going to say here? A dodo. I'm running a big risk of being a dodo. What is a dodo? What is it? Quick.
Big bird.
Yeah, you can be a dodo. I meant to be a human being, and now I'm a bird. Darn. Okay, well, I'll die and I'll go back into the cosmic soup and try to arise again as a human being. So you're here. It's precious human birth. Don't miss your opportunity. Please live your life, whatever it is. Whatever occurs to you, you have coming. You have it coming. It's just a natural situation. It's not like, oh, I shouldn't have, they shouldn't have, he shouldn't have, they shouldn't have. Well, it's a hard lesson to learn. It's really hard to not object to every damn thing that occurs or think that you deserve better. Really need to think about that. And I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just saying, look very closely at your life, whatever it is, 18 years, 20 years, 50 years, 38 years, whatever it may be. Look at what you've been doing with your life. The way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. Why is it unsurpassable? Because it points at a truth that there is nothing to surpass that dependent origination. There's nothing that can point to something that surpasses that, because all the other relative truths say you're over here and you need to get over there. You need to be better than you are right now. You're not okay right now. You got to straighten up. You got to get smarter. You've got to get a degree. You need to wax your body hairs. Is that funny? Kind of. If you imagine somebody doing that in all seriousness, I got to get a different kind of wax. This really hurts. So we spend all kinds of time trying to fix, correct, adjust, and get what we want, and keep away what we don't want. Even if you're a meditator, even if you've been meditating for years, we still feel that need to, this is not right. I shouldn't. And don't misunderstand me. What am I going to say next? There's nothing to correct. Isn't it amazing? There's nothing to correct. This is not a path where you're a bad guy and need to get better, or you've had some original sin. No. This is a path where everything from beginningless time, from the very beginning, is basically good. It's not separate from the Buddha or the awakened one. Not separate. If you realize this, the work is over. And then whatever happens is workable. Whatever occurs in your life is work. I'm not saying that it's difficult, but you don't add any, when it's difficult, you don't add any extra difficulty to it by saying, well, this shouldn't be happening. Or I should have done, or I should have, or they should have, or they shouldn't have said that, or they shouldn't have done this. The way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. Unsurpassable because we're going to find a teaching like this. Look at all the teachings there are. So far as I don't know that much about them, but you don't necessarily have to go to a spiritual path. You go to a mundane path and say, psychology, becoming very, smoothing out all of your emotional wrinkles so you no longer have resentment, and you've gotten over your whatever your parents did to you, or didn't do to you, they should have done, or did to you they shouldn't have done, or your friends, whatever.
What is the way of the Buddha?
The way of the Buddha is to understand what he taught. Life is suffering, the cause of desire, the goal is cessation, and the path is meditation, or sitting down and seeing what the situation is, which is what meditation is, being aware of what this actually is. And if you're aware of what this is, you see that it's dependently arisen. And if you see that it's dependently arisen, if you really see it, then the warfare is over. You no longer are doing like this in the pit of your stomach when things start to get a little difficult. You're no longer at war with yourself. You no longer make decisions. Would that be wonderful? Think about it. What if you never had to make another decision? No more fretting, no more sitting back and saying, geez, what should I do? Should I move to Vermont, or should I stay here in Kentucky? Is that someone's stomach? So what I'm saying by you wouldn't have to make another decision, I'm just saying that you won't be plagued by that. We're not saying there wouldn't be some decisions. Sure, you would decide to go back to college rather than just stay in the particular job that you're in now and go back and get some. So there's some decisions, but they're very lightweight. I like to say it this way: if you get to a point where you feel like there's a fork in the road and you're fretting about it, I'll say it very directly: stop it. Stop doing that. You're giving yourself a hard time. You're making up stuff about your life that is not true. It's extra stress. Shoka.
The way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. How do you become something that you're not separate from?
Well, you actually see that. If you see that you're not separate from that, then there's nothing to become. That's why it says in the Diamond Sutra, when what's his name? Shakyamuni and what's his student? Huh? Subhuti. Subhuti is when they're talking there, and I can't quote it. Perhaps you can because you've been studying it on Monday nights. But it's basically saying that that there are no beings to save. Why are there no beings to save? Nothing is separate. So what it looks like there are. So as long as it looks like there are, we take a vow to what? Put other people before ourselves. Put our own thoughts before our opinion about our thoughts. Think about what I'm saying here. This is based on being very old, having a whole lot of trouble in my life, and spending 30, 40 years sitting down and looking at my mind. That's where this is coming in. This is not coming out of a bunch of stuff I believe. I don't believe much at all. Have I made myself clear? You have more, Shoka?
Not at this point.
So the idea is the way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. So we're taking a vow to become something that we're not separate from. So it's kind of a difficult situation, but we have to do something. And when we sit down, when we live our life and we sit down and look at the wall, we sure as hell feel like we're separate from that. What is all this intense feeling or emotion or worrying about our job or worrying about our how we look or worrying about what our friends think about what we think or worrying about what we think about what our friends think about what we're thinking about? That's a really hard one, man. You can give yourself a really hard time doing that. And some of the most difficult areas are when you actually have really difficult feelings under the surface, like your own personal tsunami, or what we were talking about earlier, your own personal earthquake that keeps rumbling. What is it? It's like what? Where? Why is this happening? And the way it's taught here is rather than go into some kind of blame or some kind of accusation or some kind of analysis or some kind of a description that where you're trying to nail things down, what's being said is just be aware of it. Being aware of it will help you.
How?
Oh,
Just being aware will
Oh.
help you. How will just being aware help us?
so very good question, Unyo. So how will Unyo are asking how will just being aware help you? And this is something I've responded to. So here you are. Here's what it looks like. You sit still. You do this for an hour, 2 hours a day. You hold still, and you just look at what continues to move. If you're moving at all, if you're twiddling your thumbs, if you're kind of tapping you're sitting, maybe you're facing a wall, but you're just going like this. Not good. When I say not good, I'm not judging you. I'm not saying you're a bad guy. I'm just saying that if you're doing this, the body mind is so completely integral, so completely a one-piece matrix, if there could be such a thing. It's one piece, but it's got all these parts. It's kind of like a what? Machine. Or like a really complicated mouse. I rest my mouse. So if you observe this, if you sit down and do everything you can, take all the control that you actually have, the sitting still quality, the holding still, watching the breath continue to move, watching your heartbeat, if you can feel that in your chest. You're holding very still. You're noticing that maybe your arm is a little sore, maybe your knee, or maybe your back is slightly stressed. But you endeavor to hold very still. You put your hands like so or like so. And if you do that a lot, then the awareness part of this whole matrix we call a living being starts to get stronger, because it's not interfered with by what? It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. Anything that is, if it's a heartbeat, you need to have, the heart has to beat in order for you to live. So we'll go on. But this does not have to happen. This is extra. And when you do this, when you do any kind of fidgeting, then that complicates. I could use an image this way. It's like that very awareness that you need to see who you are and what this is, and deal with your problems directly, with your life directly. The awareness that's necessary for that gets sucked up into this kind of thing. It just gets in the way of it. I don't know of a better way to say it than that. I'm sure there is one. The same way that thinking about and analyzing and subtracting and adding and I like this, I don't like that. I shouldn't have done that. Am I saying never think, never analyze, never have a story go through? Well, that guy stole my car. I'm supposed to just drop that. Yeah, like that old guy says at the temple. He says, don't think about, just drop it. Nothing to correct. Well, I think that guy ought to be in jail. Well, I would agree with you. Probably should be. So what is it I'm saying? I'm saying we overdo it. When you have a story, every single one of you in here, including I'm speaking of myself, when you have a story about something, one time, you have a story, you stole my car, using that as an example, or someone crowded you out of the line at the food store in front of the cash register. But one time, say it one time, have it go through your brain pan once. I don't like that asshole, or whatever it may be. But one time, and don't fuel it again. Let it go, and I don't say drop it either. I'll never tell you to drop anything. I don't know how long you have to hang on to something. I respect you and what you need to do with your life. I don't know. I've been through too much myself in my life to turn around and tell you you should or shouldn't do anything. There's only one thing I will tell you to do. Meditate. Hold still, sit down, and watch the mind that keeps generating problems. You don't have to be a Buddhist. You don't have to be a non-Buddhist. You don't have to be anything. But you could be you're already a human being. So why not look and see the truth for yourself? Why listen to me? Why listen to anybody? I sometimes say, don't believe anything I say. And I mean that. I don't want you believing things. I'm saying, give me the benefit of the doubt. Listen to it and then see how that fits. If you tell a story twice, you dig a trench. The first time is fine. The first negativity is fine. And then it becomes what my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, called double negativity. A form of double negativity. The other kind is getting mad at getting mad. You get really mad, then you're mad at yourself because you're mad. It's like two squirrels fighting. Or it's like two monks fighting. They like to fight, yes.
Would it hold true for the positive also?
Yes, good point. You don't have to keep cranking up positive ideas, any kind of idea. You don't have to run it over and over again. Because when you do that, you're using stories to support some kind of imaginary self who's very successful and doing extremely well, or some imaginary self that is unreal, who is being pushed down through negativity or not being treated very well, or getting a raw deal. Every time you run that by yourself or others, that's why I often say one of my sounds kind of dumb when you say it because it's so obvious, but I say, don't do anything unless you have to. Why would you do anything you didn't have to do? Just on a hunch. I think I better do that because maybe I'm supposed to.
We have 3 questions from people watching.
Wonderful.
Okay. The first one is from Jim in Kentucky. He asks, do we ever
Hi, Jim.
escape the fruit of our karma or just see it unfold?
You don't. It may fall off and it may come back and it may ramp up and it may fade away, and you may be in for it or not. But that's not the point. The point is not separate. You're not separate. You're not separate from the rainfall. You're not separate from the clouds. You're not, to get romantic, you're not separate from music. You're not separate from dancing. You're not separate from your karma. So everything that occurs is just what is occurring. If you add anything to it, even the story that comes up about something, if you crank that up anymore, you might as well be putting blinders on, because then you're going to get kicked in the head by the next event that comes along.
The next question
Yes.
is from John Foudy out
John.
in St. Louis. He says, hi, Unyo, John Foudy here with our Sangha member Maggie Bort. Here's the question for Sokuzan. Is confusion the same as passion, aggression, or ignorance? Example, if we come to a fork in the road and we don't have all the information necessary to move forward, how does that play into awareness?
Uncomfortably. But you just do it anyway. You're actually living your life bit by bit, moment by moment. If you don't push or pull or shut down, then what is unfolding you're not really separate from. It's like this teaching, the way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. So the way of the Buddha is no longer objecting to anything, no longer at war with anything, no longer agreeing with anything. You don't have to agree. You don't have to disagree. You don't have to do anything. If you don't do anything, then everywhere you look, you see the Buddha. It's not a fancy kind of feeling like, oh my, everywhere I look, I see this guy, a gold-plated thing. We're saying what you see is not separate. You're seeing the truth that the Buddha taught, as things are not separate. It's an astonishing realization. And there are, of the 750,000 billion people on the face of the earth, they're just a small handful. Don't do it. Don't correct me. No. Okay. There's just a small number of people that actually see what this is and no longer are at war and actually are living their life moment by moment. Yes.
The next question is from Shane. Stu is with
Shane.
him. And Stu wants to know, how do you know if you have to do something?
You won't be able to help it. You won't be able to help it. And my most recent experience of that, it's really extreme. I was at a car dealership where a good friend of mine, also a student of mine, was being, shall we say, screwed by the dealers. She had a legitimate complaint about the situation, and they were worried about saving money rather than just helping her. And I watched it go on for a couple of hours, 2 hours. And then I blew my stack. And I'm not fun to be around when I'm mad. That's what got me into this practice, is I had really intense emotions and intense anger, actually. Well, the anger's still there. I haven't changed. I'm still just as angry as I ever was. But it's not separate. There's no longer a separated being here who is angry or who has an axe to grind with somebody. That being said, if I'm in the situation, and there's not a justification. It's not, I'm not saying I get to do this and you don't, or when I do it, it's okay, but you guys shouldn't correct anything. I'm saying you need to live your life however it is. It may look odd to other people. I had somebody come up to me and said, how did he say that? One of the salespeople came up and says, I've never seen a spiritual person.
You're a spiritual person.
Yeah.
I didn't know spiritual people got mad.
I didn't know spiritual people got mad. And I said, oh, I guess I'm not very spiritual then. So, I don't know.
Yeah, you did say that.
But it wasn't like there's this kind of controlled person who really understands, who's just going to get mad and kind of pretend to be mad in order to control things. I'm not talking about control. I am out of control all the time. Take a good look. I'm out of control. I don't have any controls. I kind of roughly know what I'm going to do next, but only roughly. I don't need that kind of thing happening. So when I'm saying that, we're not saying it's some kind of a state or elevated kind of person who is all-seeing. I'm just saying relate with things as they arise. Don't fight with anything. Unless it's fighting with you, then meet it where it's at. Actually meet things where how they are arising to you. And if somebody's arising, just like if somebody comes at you with a knife, take it away from them. Don't let them kill you. We might be pacifists, but we're not that bad. We're not fools. There are pacifists. You can kill Buddhists right and left because they won't fight back. Try me. You follow me? I mean, you a little bit? Because it's a difficult area because it's so fraught with thinking that you have to be a certain way, you have to live up. Even Buddhists are around, people who practice Buddhism for 20 years are around thinking that some Buddhists are doing things wrong or not being peaceful enough, or it's just bullshit.
How do we know if we are being impulsive?
You won't know. You won't know in the way that you would like to know. You won't know in the way that you can say, oh, I know I'm being impulsive, so therefore I can correct it. So you won't know. But through awareness practice, it will just begin to back off, and you will not get credit for it. But as the insight, the prajna, to use the fancy Sanskrit word, of insight into the nature, it's called wisdom, the wisdom of what this situation actually is, then impulsiveness it may arise, it may not, but you're not concerned with it. So therefore you're not looking as a judgment, well, I'm being impulsive, they're not being impulsive. But there was a while there I was impulsive, but now I'm not because I really got that covered. Well, I may be impulsive, I may not be, but what the point that I'm trying to make here, not separate. It's also called not two or non-duality or one taste. You can't find a right and wrong anywhere in this incredible situation that we call living beings. You can't find a right and a wrong. More. Yes.
Christy McDonald asks,
I know her.
if you have anger and act on it, are you engaging in aggression? And the second part of that is, how do you know you are aware?
You know you're aware when awareness happens without a self. If there's someone behind the whole thing who is aware or not aware, this is ego. If awareness is just functioning in the service of everything that is arising, there's no self. So I'm sorry, but there's no apology for that. There's no way to get out of your responsibility for everybody. You're responsible for everyone. This doesn't mean you're to blame. It just means that you have the ability to respond to everything that arises. You respond to it as it is. Using the example of the car dealership where people kept, I was kind of waiting for Sokuzan to blow up because she certainly she didn't get the name Tiger Mountain Fire Cloud from me for no reason. She's a very fiery little person. not that little.
Did you answer the first part of that question? If you have anger and act on it, are you engaging in aggression?
Yes and no. And the way in which I say that, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm saying that the anger should be not, you can't go to war with anger. If you go to war with your own anger or your own difficulty, then it will do one of three things. It will, in terms of passion, you'll start to justify the anger. In terms of aggression, you'll beat yourself down and make the anger go underground. Or in terms of ignorance, you will actually ignore it and sit on it and pretend you're not. You might do this. You might say, well, I'm not the kind of person that gets angry. You might do that for 3 months, 8 months, 8 years. You might do it your whole life. Anytime you say, I'm not the kind of person, well, this is just horse shit. Thank you. My favorite Sanskrit word. So it's a difficult area here because we want to have some kind of credential. We want to know. I want to know if I'm right or wrong. I want to know if I'm getting angry. Is this should I let myself get angry? Shouldn't I let myself? You can't do anything with that. You can't stop anger. Anybody having any luck with that? You can't stop that. But what you can do is you can strengthen the awareness so that it's so powerful, so that it's so out in front of the thinking process that when something causes and conditions, because that's where we're at, triggers the anger that is here, or the awareness that is here, however you want to characterize it, and we can do it a lot of different ways. I can teach a whole class on the vasanas or the habit energy. A lot of awareness there. If the awareness is there, then you might have a lot of heat, but there's not going to be any bite. No one's going to get killed. But the energy of the world that is arising is not separate from anything. So just because you somehow attain some kind of enlightenment, you're not going to be separate. If you actually have realized, if you've actually become the way of the Buddha, you're in for it as an individual, because you are no longer afraid of anything. You're no longer trying to live up to any ideal of Buddha or awakened person or kind person or peaceful person. If you're trying to live up to that, that's not Buddhism. That's therapy. I'm starting to get mad just talking about it.
Question from Kozan.
Yes, Sokuzan.
Okay. You said if you tell the story a second or a third time, you are digging a trench. If the stories are just observed over and over and over, and the digging is choiceless, is the trench still getting deeper?
It could be. There's no guarantee. It could be. But you should just do it anyway. You should do it with awareness. If you find yourself digging a trench and you're saying, well, maybe you can stop digging a trench, but I can't help it. I got to dig a trench. So that's what an explanation, that's passion, explaining about the trench that you have to dig. That it gets very, very complicated. Michael.
Could you go into a little bit deeper what you mean by going to war with it?
So when something comes up, we tend to, that we don't like, whether it's out here in the world, aggression coming at us, we don't like it, we go to war with it. Or if it's inside of us, we feel aggression coming up, we go to war with that and try to stop it. With some kind of a follow-up, usually you can tell it gets fishy when you hear yourself telling yourself stories. Well, it's okay, I did this, but they did that. But that gives, it was okay for me to do this or not do this, or I needed to do that, I had to do it. I had no choice. It's choiceless for me. If you're telling yourself something is choiceless, it's probably not. Something is choiceless, there's no follow-up comment to it. It just occurs. Happens all the time. If you're aware, you begin to see the choicelessness of taking, one step after another. You take a step, and what happens? The next step happens. You don't choose to step. If you did, you'd look funny. In fact, years ago, close to 40 years ago, when I first learned how to do walking meditation. I had some difficulty with it myself, but a few people really had difficulty because they had to think about moving their feet. And as soon as they thought about moving their feet, it was no longer choiceless. They had to actually think, well, now I'm moving this foot, and now I'm moving this foot, and people would fall over. I mean, not all the way, they would come back up, but they would kind of go like this. It's like, applying some kind of a lot of awareness to something you've been doing kind of naturally most of your life, and to think about it.
Is just adding something going to war, or naming it?
To some extent, when you name something, you're in a sense you're not so much objecting to it, but when something happens, if you apply any name to it, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying it's wrong to do this. It's whatever happens is correct. But we need to have as much awareness there as possible. The way to increase that awareness is to sit down and do nothing but watch what moves. So, but quite often, anytime anything happens, we do what? We name it. That's a good thing. It's a bad thing. I like it. I don't like it. It shouldn't be. It should be. We take a position on it, and then we load it up. As soon as we have the name, then we have a structure where we can put more stuff on it. Well, they shouldn't have done it. If I had just known about this. How do I know about this? I do it myself. I understand this from looking at what my own mind has been doing since I was born, and studying the Buddha's teachings just about every day. Any other folks out there?
Not yet. We have quite a few people.
Good. So we have about 8 or 9 minutes left. Any questions? The AFR people have any questions about what has been said? You should put yourself on the spot. Take a chance. I won't bite your head off. Or I might. I get a little hungry.
I heard you might.
Huh?
I heard you might.
Yeah, I might.
Can you meditate lying down?
You can lay down and call it meditation, but that's something that we do when we sleep, and so it's more like sleeping. There are people, fellow Todd teaches that, but it's more of a relaxation kind of thing, and it's very valuable. I think it's when people are, say, doing sitting meditation and they get sleepy, you could stay there and watch what it feels like to fall asleep. Be aware of that, or you could go lay down, take a nap. But I wouldn't call it meditation. I would call it sleeping, or resting, or relaxing. But meditation is about sitting the way it's taught here, and has been taught for centuries. Is about sitting still, having all the senses open, and watching what continues to move, which is usually stories and ideas and judgments and evaluations, and the way we give ourselves such a hard time. You could lay down. If you're doing a lot of sitting meditation, an hour or more a day, a fair amount of it, then you could lay down a little bit. Especially if you have back trouble or something like that, you could do a little bit of that, but I would keep it to a minimum. If you want to actually strengthen your insight about your psychology, about the nature of your life and how things are going in your life, and you want to be more aware of that, how that actually works, then probably laying down is just going to be restful. More like a break from meditation. Please don't.
Can you talk a little bit more about taking impossible vows? Saving all sentient beings is kind
Well,
of,
that's a good thing.
it's crazy.
We should say that. We should say the 4 impossible vows. That'd be good.
But
They are impossible.
it seems like vowing to do that is kind of crazy.
But look what it does. It actually puts us in the position of looking at like something like that. Even just take the last one. The way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. So if it's unsurpassable, it's a setup. You're not going to be able to do this. But it's talking about it in the way of, it's actually pointing to. Says the way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. So in a sense, as you study and as you practice, you'll see that there really isn't anything to do other than just be aware. And if the awareness starts to expand, which it will, if you prioritize it and not necessarily go back into the rabbit hole of thought and thinking and stories and who's right and who's wrong, start to spin around like that, then if you just look at it, then you see that you've never been separate from the Buddha. You've never been separate from reality. That you are a personification, you could say, of reality. You know, you are the Buddha appearing in this particular form in this lifetime. So yes, it looks impossible, but it's impossible from the point of view of ego. So this is a encouragement to see that ego is not real. If you see that ego is not real, then there's nothing to accomplish. It's already the case. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Anyone else there? Well, we got a group of really smart
Well,
people.
here's one. Shane is asking,
Shane? Okay.
is it okay to chase your passions? There's a second part to that. Is it okay to do things I'm afraid to do? That's from Stu. Is it okay to chase your passions? Is it okay to do things I'm afraid to do?
Oh. I think so, yeah. Yes. You don't need my approval for it. Just saying you're asking me, so I would say, of course. It's okay to be passionate about whatever, about cooking or making art or making music or going to the races or playing golf or doing whatever you do. Find what you like to do in your life and do that. The only thing I'm saying is, out of the 24 hours in a day, unplug this food processor mind that is spinning constantly and trying to come up with some kind of accomplishment or some kind of results, or keep away the bad things and get the good stuff. Unplug it for half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, or less or more, or whatever only you know. I'm going to say at least an hour, maybe more. Spend one day, once a month or twice a month, spend a day doing nothing but sitting down and looking at the wall. Any more questions out there in TV land? Have your hand up, or
No, I mentioned my head.
Oh, me too. Sent you.
What are the fruits of our karma?
Well, you're looking at everywhere you look. You're seeing living beings, ourselves. You look in the mirror and you see this is the karma coming out of the past. We don't know how this occurred, because the causes and conditions that create a body mind that you have or are looking through, or anyone in this room, or anyone from John out in St. Louis, or Sokuzan up in Traverse, or Christy in Traverse, or Jim, or Shane. People we're here, but we don't know how this came about. We don't know how this happened. But the explanation is that it is karma. The Sanskrit word for action is karma. It's action and reaction. This happened, that happened, this happened, that happened, this happened, this happened. And in that milieu of things that are happening, at some point, 30 years ago, your mom and dad looked at each other and said, yeah, we're gonna, well, you know, say. And then here you are. And then now you're the combination of, you look like them, you take on different characteristics, plus characteristics neither one of them have. You have a persona, you have a psychology, a kind of combination of things coming from beginningless time. Some people say past life. I don't know if it's past life or not. I don't care. All I know is this is that what we are. If you realize no separation, not separate from separate from anyone that's ever been born in any time ever. That's karma. I'm not talking about people quite often say, "Well, I have to way to watch it. My bad karma is going to get worse if I do this," and then kind of strategizing to make sure we have a good lifetime. This is baloney. Well, at least. And geez, what?
Everything is dependently arisen. Are all dependencies karma?
Sure.
Everything that happens is karma.
Yes. If you're sitting here, then you're approximating kind of no karma. You're sitting still and you're holding still and you're watching the karma that keeps tumbling by and tumbling by and tumbling by. And the more you do this, the more you see that there has to be a space for the karma to occur. Just a little trickery going on here with duality. There has to be a space. It's like there has to be a blue sky for clouds. And, you notice the blue sky doesn't do anything. It just kind of hangs there, and the blue skies come in and waddle on through the blue sky and do whatever they want. It doesn't seem to mark the blue sky at all. Blue sky is just fine. No matter how dark it gets or how light it gets, it doesn't. Those clouds do nothing to the blue sky. So when you approximate a blue sky by holding very still, you begin to see over time, you begin to see the way you keep concocting ideas and creating problems for yourself. You can't get away from the problem. So we're not saying that if you get really clear, suddenly there's no clouds in your sky. No, what happens is, if I may say it this way, is you see that the clouds in the sky are not separate from each other. The sky, you can see the sky because of the blue cloud. You can see the blue clouds because of the sky. So they're dependently arisen. Sky, clouds, delusion, awakening, life, death. That's a scary one. That's the scary one, the death one, because it's like we don't really believe we're going to die. We know we are intellectually, but we don't really think that that's actually going to happen. It's a long way on. Ash.
Should you always be
Yes.
honest?
Yes.
You should always be honest, yes. You need to keep going because there's a lot more there. I'm ready. Then why did you tell me to lie, right?
Why have you told me? Yeah.
Yeah, you should always be honest if you can. But if being honest is going to hurt somebody just so you can be the honest person, then there's something messed up about that.
What if that wasn't your intention in the honesty?
That's very fishy, Ash. That's very fishy. You know what I'm saying. I know you know. You're a smart woman. There vows that we receive are to be observed, not to be followed blindly like a bunch of rules. Or people that need rules, that's a more primitive form of spiritual path. We're not taking that away from people, but that's people need to live with some kind of commandments structure. Then that's more like adults and the head adult and the little children. We're talking about we're all adults. We're going to do this together. We're not going to just lay trips on people. You must have noticed for the 8 or 9 months that you've lived at this temple that you're not treated like a child here. You're treated like an adult. You're respected. No one's ever raised their voice at you or accused you of lying, have they? Have you lied?
I'm sure I have.
Good show. I like that. Yes.
On that altar, there's that physical thing.
This guy?
Yes. As it is,
That's over here.
right, but as it is, there's no cause right now, right?
Nope. Nope, there's no cause. as it is. And this is what you're talking about is Dogen's statement, firewood does not become ash. We're not talking about ash, we're talking about firewood. And it is a way of when this occurs, it is a way of seeing or understanding or relating to the concept we call eternity. It's just a way of talking about it. Contemplate that.
But a few minutes ago, we said that everything was a cause. That all dharmas are causes.
I changed my mind. But you can continue to ask questions based on having me entrapped if you want to. I like this, so you can keep going if you'd like
Okay.
to talk more. But watch it.
But that is, am I pronouncing the word right? Rumpa? Or the?
You mean Rumpelstiltskin?
No, I'm not pronouncing the word. Instead of using the word form,
Rupa.
Rupa,
Who said that?
Jeff.
I might have
my
known.
partner there.
Jeff.
Rupa.
It is, Rupa means form.
But it's a specific type of form, right?
I like Rupa better.
I do too. You know,
Yeah,
I make
Rupa.
up words,
Rupa means form, man.
but it's a physical or corporal.
You know, form, if I say, if I make any statement that's imaginary, like a basket of blue flowers, we see a basket, we all see something like that in our mind. And that's actually a form. It's just not, it's on a level or on a plane that is not as,
Not corporal.
it's not as solid as this is. It's a different way of looking at it. Actually, that plane is much different because it's even though it's come into existence, it can't pass out of existence. It's always, anytime you look at those flowers, they'll be there from now on for the rest of, how long? 6 months.
Minutes.
Oh, 6 minutes. Smart mom. Yes. More.
Well, so a form that you were just talking about, something, the flowers
Yes.
that you put into our heads,
Yes.
that cause doesn't exist either, right?
Okay.
Well, once it's in our head, does the cause at your saying it, that doesn't
Oh, I
exist?
see. The cause is not separate from what it is. So it looks separate. Looks like I said something and then something happened, but they're not separate from each other. Nothing is separate from anything. Anna Maria in New York or Brooklyn, probably.
She asks, when in a tsunami, if you don't name it, for example, shame or anger,
Yes.
What is helpful to identify?
It is helpful if you're in an emotional tsunami where suddenly you have really intense feelings that you're not doing anything with. It seems to be helpful. It may not be helpful to go and sit. That may be too difficult, but it seems to be valuable to stay and to feel the intensity of your feelings. And we're not saying this is a palliative or a cure that if you do this, you're suddenly going to feel better. You could feel worse. You could feel it can be more difficult, but it is. I feel my understanding is it's an authentic way to relate to something is to not ignore it, to just feel it all the way through the floor. Let it really rumble. Let it really feel the wind from that intensity. It's very difficult. Quite often what people do when that happens is they want to get out of it. So they look for drugs, medication, activity. They immediately go jogging, and I'm not against jogging, but when some kind of activity is there to cover up something that you don't want to feel, then you're, it's not that wouldn't work to some extent, but it won't work indefinitely. At some point it will cave, it will fall apart, and then you may really be in for it. It may work for certain things, and then suddenly when things get really difficult, it just can be harder.
second part to it.
Certainly.
Is it all one same energy, sometimes more intense, other times less?
I think it could be seen that way. That if there's one area that just needs to be to work with, not objected to, and not agreed with, and not shut down on, and that maybe it's hard to know how much depth is there. That might not necessarily get cleaned out or vanish. It's the self-centeredness that is the thing that needs to be seen. That there is not a solid self. Who you think you are as a solid being is not real. In the sense that it's a solid being. It's one of the ways to look at this is it's discontinuous. Sometimes your self feels very secure. Sometimes your discontinuous self feels threatened. Sometimes your discontinuous self, and we say, well, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way, I'm feeling this way. And if you really listen to what you're saying, you're basically describing that you're not a solid being. You're just emotions and thoughts and feelings and so on that are arising, triggered by this six sense fields and 8 consciousnesses. Okay, so we're way past 9. So thank you very much. We can dedicate the marriage. Thank you so much. Especially thank you to people who joined us online on you go over there.
The merit of this penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho San Shi Shi Son Gu Sa Mo Ko Sa Mo Ho Ja Ho Ro Ni. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Hey, those